Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast, the college offseason podcast, where you could say we're less of the regular season, but more of the offseason. I don't know if you all follow me or Matt on social media, but Matt actually summed up my opening statement perfectly. If you've ever seen Avengers Infinity War, you remember the scene where Thanos, throws his daughter Gamora off the cliff to sacrifice her so that he can receive the Soul Stone. I had that exact same feeling yesterday as I sacrificed my Duke Blue Devil basketball team winning their first ACC road game so that Texas could beat Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship right out of the Big 12 in style and officially clinch a berth in the college football playoff. But as happy as I am for my Longhorns, I do want to say one more thing, Matt, because I know you wanted to chime in on something, but I do have one more thing to say.
Yeah.
How is it that this is probably the easiest decision for the college football playoff committee to pick the best four teams or the correct four teams in the college football playoff, and they still got it wrong? You had three undefeated Power 5 conference champions plus Texas, because Texas had the best resume of the one-loss teams. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that's probably what you wanted to talk about.
It is because, we're going to talk primarily about coaching today, but we've got to address the elephant in the room, or in this case, the elephant in the college football playoffs, which is Alabama. But more importantly, Les, we're going to remember this day, I feel, going forward as the day I've been predicting for a while, which is that the ACC is done. They're done after this. Florida State is going to look for any reason they can, like they were before, to get out and join the SEC or the Big Ten, because the committee basically said, ACC, you're just group of five now. You're just group of five, if that. And I think we're going to be talking about this playoff as the straw that broke the camel's back in that sense. And I know people, when people like me say that, the retort is usually, well, there's going to be 12 teams in the playoff next year. That's going to make it easier. It's not about the 12-team playoff. It's about the respect, and it's about the revenue. And they didn't get either one of those today, and they know they're not going to get it going forward. And you know who else had 12 teams in the playoff for most of my life? The NFL.
Yeah.
And that's where we're headed. That's where we've been headed, folks. You need to adjust to that now. The Big Ten's going to take whatever four-ish teams they want. The SEC is going to take whatever four teams they want. And it's going to start out with like the top four from each, and then the two, like maybe a couple from the Big 12, and then a couple from the Power 5. And then that's going to go away. And basically the Big Ten's going to be the AC, the NFC, and the SEC is going to be the AFC. And that's what we're going to head for. We're going to head to like 12 teams from that group making it to the playoffs, and them having a de facto Super Bowl between the two champions. That's where we're headed, folks. And today was just another accelerant in the process of getting there. Like, I hate to be this way because, I love the little guys, but that's just where it's happening. And now I think we're going to see that process accelerated to the point where we end up with the Big Ten and the SEC as a real minor league of the NFL. And that's just where we're headed. And after that, the battle becomes, when do the other sports say enough is enough? We know football's the revenue sport. It's the moneymaker. But we can't risk sending our girls' basketball team to North Carolina and then to Washington in a week when their home base is in Evanston, Illinois. And that's going to be the next phase of this, because whether we want to admit it or not, we are past the point of no return. Today was, I feel like, them patting the shovel on the ground of the grave. And now, who knows where we're headed? God knows where it's going to go. It's going to be fun at times, and it's going to be horrible at others. But the amazing thing is, though, Les, I feel like they got it right. I really do feel like they got it right. Because I don't want to offend Florida State, but they just aren't the same team without Drew and Travis. They're just not. And I know we can have the battle over most deserving versus best all day long, but there's no right answer. There's no right answer to any of this. But my big takeaway from today is that this was the end of the functional ACC as we know it. And it's going to be interesting now to see how long this process takes to get us to the point where I felt like we're heading all along.
Yeah, you've called anyone who's followed this podcast knows Matt has called this prediction from day one that we are officially gravitating more towards an NFL style model for the college football. And I think we definitely can agree that this is the death of the ACC as we know it for sure. That much we can agree on. Where I don't agree with as far as leaving Florida State out because they don't look the same without Jordan Travis. Almost called him Travis Hunter. Sorry, don't know why I did that. But anyways,
That would be fun,
the
though.
thing is, honestly, for Florida State to be able to continue to win with a backup and third string quarterback actually is more impressive to me than winning just with Jordan Travis. Because you look at Alabama, who made the college football playoff, they struggled with USF with their backup quarterback in. Florida State obviously is not as good without Jordan Travis, but I mean, they still beat a top 15 team by double digits. I mean, they still were able to win the remaining games of their schedule with their backup in. And then beating a top 15 team, they beat with a third stringer in. So I think that argument does actually favor Florida State more so than Alabama. And again, it all comes down to me, though, is that Florida State was undefeated in essentially a Power Five conference, whether we want to consider the ACC Power Five or not. They are Power Five. And if people want to argue strength of schedule, or especially my favorite, SEC versus ACC, the ACC went 6-4 against the SEC this year. So I mean, I feel for Florida State. At the end of the day, I'm happy because Texas got it. That much we all know. Like there's no secret there. But no, I feel for Florida State because they absolutely deserve to get in, and I absolutely hate the eye test argument because there is no criteria for the eye test argument. It's a subjective, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know it when I see it argument, and that just does not bode well for me versus a team that has evidence to fall back on, which Florida State does, being undefeated. So that's just where I stand on that.
Right, and I feel like that's totally valid too. But like I said, the committee basically saying that the ACC is Power Five. I mean, that's the death knell to me. That's the death knell.
Right, right. But we could probably talk about this all day. We actually have a main topic of this podcast that Matt and I are going to get into, and that is we're going to go down the line with some of the coaching hires and fires that have happened just since our last crazy coaching fires episode. And, we're going to start off because Matt has a team that has not only fired their head coach since our last podcast. Well, no, they fired him before our last podcast, but they've also hired the guy that's going to replace him. So Matt, overall, what were your thoughts on Indiana firing Tom Allen and then bringing in JMU coach Curt Cignetti? Is that pronounced right?
I thought it was Cignetti or Cignetti.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just want to make sure I have that right.
I don't know. I'm not sure of that either. We'll just play it by ear until we figure it out. But Les, I've honestly never. I always considered myself a college football free agent just because Indiana, in my time on this earth, has been one of the most irrelevant football programs I've ever seen. I mean, they're in the Big Ten, which is a good conference, and they just don't win a lot of games in the Big Ten. It doesn't matter if it's Kevin Wilson or Tom Allen. There's about one good season, which in Indiana is about 6 wins, for every five that are like 3-9, 2-8, just absolutely abysmal in some way, shape, or form. So when I first heard this, it's kind of just like, what do you expect from it? What do you expect out of a program that's in the bottom third of their league in football? That's a league that's expanding to add even more better teams that puts you even deeper into the bottom third. And what do you do after that? Because people on like the IU message boards were talking about, oh, we should go get Antoine Randall. The whole it'll have the same effect as Deion Sanders. I loved Antoine Randall. I love watching him. I loved watching him play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was a dynamic athlete. He's not Deion Sanders. He's not. He doesn't have the star power. He doesn't have the charisma that Deion Sanders does. But I appreciate the fact they were trying to do something to move the needle. Because when it looked like it was going to be Paul Christ, it was just like, this is just admitting you're doing the same thing again, over and over again. A boring, tried out Big Ten coach who's going to go in, maybe have one or two good years, and that's it. Something like that. And then the rest of the time, you're back to going 3-9, just being kind of incredibly mediocre. So initially, it's like, who do you hire for a home run? It's like John Gruden, really? That just seems kind of silly. John Gruden seems kind of silly. Antoine Randall would have been interesting, but I don't think it's got the move you It's not the move I think you think it is if you're Indiana fans. So I think when they hired Cignetti, they hired the best option they could get. They hired a guy who's a little bit older, who's a little bit of the antithesis of what the last regime was. Tom Allen had like love everybody written on everything. They did that. I don't know if you saw this list, but before a game against Louisville, they did a weird like jazz hands snapping routine to like the IU fight song. And it was, as the kids say, it was cringe. It was very cringe.
Mhm.
And this dude, on like the Indiana played Maryland in basketball the night he was hired, shows up at Assembly Hall and says, "Purdue sucks, and so does Ohio State and Michigan." And
I
and,
love
and
it.
that's just something you don't hear from an IU coach, or at least an IU football coach. So it's pretty amazing to think about that from that standpoint. I mean, yeah, I know this guy is older, but he's a disciple of Nick Saban. He was a recruiter and a coach on some of the very best Alabama teams that I've seen play college football. You gotta you it's a really good move, I think. This dude's got a little bit of an attitude, which is something you need, I think, more in the Big Ten. I mean, we saw what he did, James Madison. And there's something about that too. Even being at James Madison with the publicity they got this year from the NCAA rulings about who can participate in bowls, that makes them kind of more of a household name than before, makes them more interesting. So, given the circumstances, I would give this hire an A. I mean, like I said, if you're Indiana, what kind of move do you make that's a flash move besides hiring Urban Meyer or John Gruden or somebody who's got a lot of baggage? What do you do? And I mean, it's a much better move than hiring just the MAC coach of the year or hiring Paul Chryst. This guy's got an attitude. This guy has proved he can coach a lot of programs. He's worked with some of the best in the sport. He's going to be fine. And at Indiana, fine is just going 6-6 or at least beating Purdue. It's not like you're going to have to do Georgia stuff. You're not going to have to go to the Big Ten championship. You just have to be respectable. And I think this guy, with his attitude and his proven coaching pedigree, blah, 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 is going to be just fine. I think it's the best hire IU could have made in this case, because what else are you going to do?
I want to talk about what you said about his attitude, because I don't know if you saw, but he actually showed up to the Big Ten Championship Media Day.
Yeah.
And, he said, and of course, when he says,
We're going
I
to be
thought I'd
playing
make
here next year.
Right, we'll be playing here next year. I thought I'd make the trip because we're playing here next year. And that stands out because he's got the swagger that you want with a new hire head coach. And then the best part about this is, based on his resume so far, he can kind of back that up, because he was James Madison's coach for the last 5 seasons, and every year they've won their conference. I mean, he went 52-9 and then 31-4 in the conference. So I mean, the best part about his attitude is that he does have something to back it up. Obviously, the Big Ten is a different animal than the CAA and then the Sun Belt Conference, but still, I mean, anyways, he's got the swagger. He can definitely coach. Now the question is, can he bring in the players? That's going to be the next question.
James Madison's quarterback, the Sun Belt Player of the Year, is already in the transfer portal. So
there you go.
Maybe have a little bit of an advantage on other teams there to go ahead and get the quarterback for Indiana next year. So yeah, like I said, at Indiana, when you're just trying to stay afloat at this point. When I was younger, I postulated that Indiana would probably be better off in the Big 12, to be honest, a more basketball oriented league. But like I said, this is the best move you can make. I mean, what else are you going to do? Hire the same old, or if you try to make an impact, it's bound to like backfire on you. So I'm quite pleased with it. I'm going to be interested to see what he does going forward, and that's why I really like the Cignetti hire.
Going from one of our teams that has already hired and fired a head coach to going to another one of our teams whose head coach just took a different job, and I think all of you all know where this is going with this one. But of course, you knew we were going to have to address Mike Elko going to Texas A&M. And of course, the biggest thing I took away when it initially happened was that I don't think people understand how good Mike Elko was at Duke. And you all have heard me say the numbers a million times on this podcast, but just to sum it up, he got College Game Day to come to Durham, and we're not talking about basketball. That in itself is an astronomical win for the program.
Yes,
but
it is.
I look at the culture he established very quickly at Duke. And if he's able to replicate that with the resources he'll have at Texas A&M, he'll likely be able to recruit more talented players and bring in just as good of coordinators. this might be the hottest take I've ever made on this podcast. But if he's able to replicate the culture at Texas A&M that he built at Duke, like I said, with all the resources that he's going to have available to him, I can see Texas A&M winning a national championship within the next 10 years.
That's a fairly manageable time frame, yeah, with the 12-team playoff and things breaking the right way. I think that's more than okay. Yeah, I could see that happening.
And not to mention, history also tells me I'm right on this one, because the last time an up-and-coming coach from Duke who had no prior coaching experience left Duke for the SEC, we could ask Florida fans, but I'm pretty sure it worked out pretty good. And if you haven't figured out who I'm talking about, it's Steve Spurrier, the old ball coach. The old ball coach. So history tells me, history is on my side with this one, and I'm very confident in that because Mike Elko can definitely coach. The only thing I don't like about Mike Elko is how he handled leaving Duke.
Yeah, that was weird for him.
I mean, he left in the middle of the night and then gave his players a Zoom call the next morning at like 10 a.m. after the news had already broke. I mean, that to me, that wasn't a good move. It was not a good look for him.
Hashtag this could have been an email.
No. I think that the players definitely deserved him to at least
show up in person. Yeah.
And of course, and I think from the players, the player psyche is already feeling this effect because quarterback Riley Leonard and safety Jalen Stinson have already entered the portal. And
at least we know where Riley Leonard's going.
Okay, I was going to get to that, but yeah, because there's another quarterback I want to talk about that's already gotten to the portal that I think we'll address later on the show. But obviously, this brings up the next question: is who replaces Elko at Duke? Before I get into some names, Matt, just any hypotheticals, no rhyme or reason. Who would you like to see be the next Blue Devils head coach?
John Gruden.
Really?
No, I'm just being fun.
I know.
No, I don't really have anybody. It's just going to be interesting to see who they get to try to replicate what they've already got, and how much, and if there's somebody left over after Elko takes who he wants to take with him.
Mm-hmm. There's been 5 names I've seen floating around as like the most likely to land this job. You have Florida State's offensive coordinator Alex Atkins, who ACC media seems to think he's a star in the making. You have Kevin Johns, who is Duke's offensive coordinator currently, Manny Diaz, who is Penn State's defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, who is Ohio State's defensive coordinator, and then Trooper Taylor, who is the current interim head coach for the Blue Devils as we speak, / the running back coach. But my thing is, right, that's an awesome name. You're right. And the player, and I've heard nothing but good things. The players and recruits apparently love him. But here's my thing, though. I'm kind of skeptical about hiring another coordinator with no prior head coaching experience at the Division I level. And the reason I say that is because if you look historically, Duke is obviously not a great football program historically. And my fear with that is having no previous head coaching stint, it almost gives me the feel that it's going to be more likely that they're going to use Duke as a stepping stone to get to their next big school. Whereas I feel like if we brought in a coach with already previous head coaching experience at the Division I level, I would at least have somewhat more of comfort that they would be willing to stick around. But obviously that's not set in stone either. But I just feel like it's a lot more of a safer pick than picking a new up-and-coming coordinator. That's just my opinion.
Especially with like Manny Diaz, who's already had like his moment in the sun going to Miami and whatnot. So I like that one too. I mean, Trooper Taylor's fun to say, but Manny Diaz does have a pedigree and he's a tough guy who I think could bring like that toughness to Duke.
Well, and honestly, if I had to choose for these coordinators, it would probably be Alex Atkins because apparently, and that's only because of what I've been reading about how ACC media believes he's just a star in the making, or Jim Knowles, because I feel like he could replicate some of the culture that Mike Elko built there, being a tough-minded defensive coordinator. So that's just my opinion. But knowing Nina King, it's going to be none of these 5 people.
It's going to be Urban Meyer.
Oh, Lord. I mean, if it's Urban Meyer, we could say that Duke and Florida have a weird pipeline now between Spurrier and Meyer.
Here comes Tom Allen. No, that would never happen.
That would be awful. No. Tom Allen needs to do what you hypothetically said he should do and become the defensive coordinator at USC.
USC, I think, hired somebody, though. It's over. He needs to
Have they
go
already?
somewhere. Yeah, I thought they did. Now I got to look it up, Les. Look what you made me do. What you made me do. We're not going to owe their Taylor Swift money, though.
Oh no, we're starting more Taylor Swift references on the show. I don't know how I feel about it. I thought that time came and went, Matt.
No, I drew a blank space on whether or not they hired somebody. Oh, come on. That was good. Yes, they hired UCLA defensive coordinator DeAnton Lynn as their new defensive coordinator.
Well,
That's a
hopefully
good
he can
one.
do a better job than Alex Grinch.
He's got to. Every year it feels like during our cap or no cap college football, I've said something about how good UCLA's defensive line is. So that's a good start.
That is a
I've
good
talked
start.
about how good they are usually. So yeah, they'd have hired somebody. I drew a blank space on that one. It wasn't a guy I knew all too well, so I had to. Man, you are not appreciating this at all, Les. Man,
I am just getting ready for the next segment as well. I am
never in my
multitasking. I'm allowed
wildest
to do that.
dreams did I
Don't let the
imagine.
shades fool you. I am fully aware of what's going on.
I'm just gonna shake that one off and we'll move on.
More more Taylor Swift references. I don't like it. All right, moving on. So we're going to go to the next big coaching hire, and that is Michigan State hiring former Oregon State head coach Jonathan Smith. Matt, what were your thoughts on this move?
I like this move, but there is something I was concerned about with it, which is number one. I feel bad for Oregon State. You're losing your conference, you lose your coordinator, you lose DJ Uiagalelei. He's gone. I feel bad for Oregon State. They just had a really rough patch here lately. It's just I'm curious to see how well he's going to do at Michigan State, and if he brings DJ with him. Um, Oregon State was precated on running the football a lot and having a really stout defense, which fits the Big Ten West pretty darn well. Even though I know they're in the East, there are no divisions anymore in the Big Ten, but it's a very Big Ten mindset. So I'm curious to see how well this is going to go. So I think it's a good move. I think that right now, if you're Michigan State, after everything you've been through, like the past few weeks, or past few seasons between the Mel Tucker rise and catastrophic fall, you just need somebody level headed. You just need someone to right the ship, and that's who you're getting. I think with Jonathan Smith, a very rock solid, level headed guy who's into program building. So I think it's the right move for them to make. I would have liked to see them, especially in the era of new exciting offense, to get somebody who's a little bit more offensive minded. But like I said, right now, if you're Michigan State, all you're trying to do is just give the program an anchor. And you've got a guy who did that in the Pac 12, RIP Pac 12, who's got ties to pretty good players. Like I said, he could bring in DJ. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what he does. But I think that's the kind of move you got to. It's not an exciting move necessarily, but I think it's the kind of move you've got to make if you're Michigan State in this scenario, because much like Indiana, who else were you going to get in this situation? And their fans actually did think they could get Urban Meyer. So I remember seeing a few message board posts about that. So I think it's a good move.
I agree, and you actually took the words right out of my mouth as talking about just what his calling card was at Oregon State and how it's a perfect fit in the Big Ten altogether. So I'm going to skip that portion because no one wants to hear me just repeat after Matt's talking points. But so I'm going to talk about DJ Uiagalelei because that was the other quarterback I was talking about with Riley Leonard, is that we were going to give our best prediction of where both of them are going to go. Riley Leonard, we already seem to know, is going to Notre Dame. I mean, The thing is, he's got the no contact clause in the transfer portal, which pretty much is a guarantee that he knows where he wants to go. And with Notre Dame being the lead crystal ball, I mean, it's almost all but a done deal at this point. But DJ is a more interesting case because he doesn't have the no contact clause, and now this is just becoming an interesting story because if you follow recruiting, DJ Uiagalelei was once a 5-star recruit who there was a legitimate debate at one time or another of whether or not he was the best quarterback in his class next to now starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young. But now you look at him, he'll be in school for 5 years now, and he's on his third different school. He's essentially becoming another JT Daniels, which if you also remember, JT Daniels was a 5-star recruit in the class of 2018. And there was a debate on if he was as good, if not better, than the other two studs of that class, who I'd say turned out to be pretty good college and, to be determined to a certain extent, pro quarterbacks and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. But yeah, JT Daniels, I mean, he's went from Georgia to West Virginia to Rice, or am I missing one? No, USC.
Well,
He started USC. Yeah, he started
well,
USC. So JT Daniels has played for almost as many schools as he's been in college.
and he
And
just retired from
yeah, and
football.
he just retired from football. And DJ Uyunglele is trending in that same direction. A once very talented player who is now going to be known more for playing for as many schools as his years in college football. And it's kind of weird because I mean the kid does have a lot of talent, and he shows flashes and moments, but he's just never. It just doesn't seem like he's ever to put it fully together. So with that being said, Matt, honest hypothetical situation, where do you see DJ playing next year?
Well, I mean, he's going to the same place that all the players in the transfer portal are going, and that's
Colorado.
Bloomington, Indiana, baby. Everyone's going to IU. It's for the birth of a new dynasty. Oh, I'm kidding. I
Mm-hmm.
just now you know. Now you know how it feels to be on the other end of that. I'd just like to
Mm-hmm.
point that out.
That's
Um,
fine.
I wouldn't mind seeing him in Michigan State. To be honest with you, I think he revitalized his career with Oregon State. And sticking with the guy who gets you, who knows you, who can design an offense around you, I don't ever think that's a bad decision, especially if, like you said, for this kid, it started out so poorly at Clemson. You know, getting that respect back, getting that thing back, and not being the guy who played for like four different schools during his college tenure, being a guy who just stuck with his coach. I think that would be good. I think that would always be a smart move. But then you've got the other suitors too, like we've talked about. Like you said, he's got a good arm. So Louisville could be in there, Kentucky could be in there. Any team that needs a quarterback could be in there. And another thing that I don't feel that could affect this decision is just how deep the quarterback transfer portal class is getting.
Yeah,
You've got
absolutely.
Cam Ward in there. You've got the kid from the University of New Hampshire who's a stud in there. You've got Will Rogers, who we talked about ad nauseum last week. There are a lot of guys in the transfer portals who are good quarterbacks, and like I said, maybe you just stick with a guy who treats you like what you are, treats you like you're a good commodity, and that's what you do if you're DJ Uyunglele. You just stay there. But so I would think at this point, I'd say Michigan State just to follow the guy who helped revive your career. Maybe, like I said, stay with that rudder, stay focused, stay on the same straight and narrow, and see what you can do with your career from there.
I have either Michigan State, and this is going to be ironic because I've already predicted another quarterback to transfer to this school, but my other choice is Oregon. I feel like if Oregon doesn't get Brock Vandergrift to transfer, I think they might. It's a serious conversation that they might go after DJ Uyunglele. I mean, with Bo Nix leaving essentially, um, and DJ, essentially revitalizing his career in the Pac-12 this year, and now Oregon going to the Big Ten next year. Oregon may take a chance of trying to, help revitalize another quarterback's career and another talented one at that. Because Bo Nix was a very talented quarterback in his own right as well. And I mean, to top it off as well, DJ's brother plays for Oregon. So
Yeah,
that might be just another incentive to transfer to Oregon. So it's Michigan State or Oregon for me.
I would agree with that. You choose your family or your coach.
Absolutely. Moving on, and I think Matt is going to have plenty to say about this one. Bobby Petrino is the new offensive coordinator for Arkansas. He is returning to the Hogs. Matt, your thoughts? And we have 10 minutes left to go, so we're going to have to speed through these next couple coaches.
Well, that's good because I don't have much to say a lot about him other than this one. But you know what, Les? One of the most favorite sayings I've ever heard across time and space is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. We all know what happened the last time Bobby Petrino was in Arkansas, and no tale of motorcycles and neck braces and famous images that are parodied and memed beyond ad nauseum status will ever change that. And in a way, I kind of like it. I think this is a way that they're trying to that Arkansas is trying to make their offense more innovative because, and we'll talk about this guy next week, I'm sure. They've got one of the prize quarterbacks in the transfer portal in KJ Jefferson. Maybe this is a ploy to get him to stay to play like this invigorating offensive genius type coach, even if he does come with the baggage. And I mean, there's no way to properly understate how disappointed Arkansas fans were with their production this year. I mean, you go 4-8, you lose to Alabama by 3. I mean, it's just been this year has just been a slog with Raheem Sanders and everybody on that roster. And Sam Pittman's hanging on by the skin of his teeth. And when you're hanging on by the skin of your teeth, when you're grasping at straws, sometimes you grab the straw and you're just like, and the straw either saves you or it breaks in half. And maybe this time the straw saves them, maybe it doesn't. But I just absolutely think it's hilarious that we've ended up with Bobby Petrino back in Fayetteville after all that talk of scandal and motorcycles and volleyball coaches. It's just hilarious to me. I mean, the memes from this are going to be glorious, and that's what really matters.
Which is weird to me because is it just me here, or does this seem to be one of the most publicized hirings of a coordinator in recent memory? Because it seems like
Really is.
it really does. It seems like it's just getting so much attention, and of course he's making all these appearances, and then ESPN's covering it. It just seems like you would think Bobby Petrino was hired as the new head coach, but he's not. He's just the offensive coordinator. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And I think you do make an interesting point about KJ Jefferson, because if you look at Bobby Petrino's history as an offensive-minded coach, the reason, one of the big, or not the reason, but a big factor in why he left Louisville initially the first go around to coach the Falcons was getting a chance to coach Michael Vick, a running style quarterback. He, of course, comes back to Louisville and then plays a big role in Lamar Jackson coming to Louisville. And then, of course, another running style quarterback. So I think you're onto something, that this could be a ploy to get KJ Jefferson, another run dominant quarterback, to stick around in Fayetteville and then maybe possibly flourish in a Bobby Petrino system.
And also, too, you mentioned it. It seems like they hired their head coach. Maybe that's a signal to Sam Pittman, like, yo, get this shit together, or you're gonna be done here. We already have a guy who's coached at the Division I level, and he's right as your offensive coordinator, and we can easily elevate him if this thing goes south very quickly.
You and I are on the same wavelength right now, and I just don't know how I feel about it. I love it, but hate it at the same time. I don't know. Maybe why you're my co-host. But anyways, we got about 6 minutes left, so we're going to speed through these next couple. Jeff Lebby, the former offensive coordinator for Oklahoma, was hired as the Mississippi State head coach. Matt, you said you don't really have a lot to say about that one.
No, I really don't.
I'm just going to say that it looks good on paper, because Mississippi State, the last several seasons, has been one of the more offensive-minded teams in the SEC, and Jeff Lebby led a Sooners offense that was ranked 13th and 4th, respectively, the last 2 seasons. So on paper, that looks good numbers-wise, but obviously all the questions come into play here. Can he keep the charisma as a head coach? Can he recruit? Yada, yada, yada. Can he keep the Riz? Absolutely. And then we're going to get to finally the last coaching situation, and that's where Houston fired their head coach, Dana Holgorsen. And I'm going to add this, Matt. At first glance, I was a little surprised by this, because I remember the 12-win season in 2021. But then after doing some more research on this, he was in Houston for 5 seasons, and 3 of them were losing seasons. And obviously, having a losing season in your first year in a new conference doesn't bode well. But then, so they get rid of him, and then they hired.
This is weird to me.
Yeah, and then they hired Willie Fritz. So, Matt, thoughts on that?
It just once again, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. But I do like this move. I do like Willie Fritz a great deal. I mean, I think he's 64. He's definitely up 63. There in age. 63, my bad. Sorry, Mr. Fritz. I didn't mean to make you a year older. But he's 63. I mean, he's turned Tulane into a team who has made and won a New Year's Six bowl game a year ago, and had a chance to go back and, I'm not going to lie, didn't have a great showing yesterday. But that's Tulane, New Orleans, big recruiting area for him. So, that bodes well for a guy going into Houston. They're fairly close to one another. At least I think Tulane is in New Orleans, if I'm incorrect. If I'm incorrect, thank you. I had to check my source, but it's good recruiting for New Orleans because I mean you can go from New Orleans to Houston relatively quickly.
Just
So
ask Lil
yeah,
Wayne. He grew up in New Orleans and went to Houston for college. So just
yeah.
ask him.
So he's got ties to both areas, and that's key for that because that's a big recruiting zone. That's a good recruiting area, and I mean I can't really say anything else. I mean, I know he's an older guy, but sometimes you need that. Once again, Houston moving up to the Big 12, it's another one where you just need somebody who's level-headed, who's been in weird situations like this before and is willing to give everything they've got to make you successful. And I mean, I think Willie Fritz will do that. So, I like that hiring too. I really do.
And it's weird because, in 2021, Tulane went 2-10 and then just out of nowhere went 12-2 and 11-2 in the last two couple seasons. So it's just like really weird what's like shifted with Willie Fritz. Is he actually peaking at is he actually hitting his stride at 63 years old?
Have you
That's what's
ever
interesting about me.
have you ever heard the phrase aging gracefully, Leslie? Yes, he's aging very gracefully. Also,
Apparently, yeah.
if you were watching on the podcast, I'm sorry about that sudden tump. The Colts just walk off touchdown to Titans. So I'm
Let's
very
go.
excited about that. My bad. But yeah, I think that's a good point.
Don't
Like I said,
apologize.
you need someone, like I said, sometimes you just need an older, level headed influence to help you out. And I think he's definitely that guy for Houston.
And here's an
Yeah,
idea. Here's an idea I want to add real quick because we got about 2 minutes left.
go ahead.
This could be a move to where Houston maybe thinks that they have the coach of the future on staff, but they just want
Yeah,
to get him a little more seasoned as a coordinator the last couple of seasons. And
that's
then
what I'm
maybe
thinking too.
yeah, and they might just bring in an older guy just to kind of establish a culture and then have the younger guy come in and build off of that.
That's why I did much like Indiana. That's why I'm curious to see who Houston and Indiana are going to bring on as coordinators because I feel like that's going to be a situation we may see play out twice. Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up all the topics we have for today. This episode actually went by really fast. Of course,
it did.
we went on a little mini rant at the beginning of the show, so that actually definitely made
We
it go
had
by
to.
a little fast. But anyways, as always, like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channel. Follow our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That is at Less is More Sports to get the latest updates on our new content coming soon. And as always, Matt and I are officially out. And I do want to end on one more thing. I don't know what you said earlier, but it had Dean all up in a frenzy. Did you hear him barking?
Yes, I did. I wondered who that was. If I was having mic interference, or whether that was my stomach, or what.
I don't know, but you set Dean into a frenzy, dude.
Poor Bean. Next week we'll have Les's exclusive review of Godzilla -1.
Yeah, best Godzilla movie I've ever seen.
See, we're ready for it, folks. Get ready.
You're ready for it. I think it's officially time to end the podcast on that note.
All right. We'll see you all next week.
Stop licking me, dude.
Okay, he's talking to Bean, not me.
I think people can. Okay, I do want to point this out. Matt is in Scottsburg and I'm in Louisville. So if Matt's licking me from Scottsburg, we have a serious issue on our hand.
I have a very long tongue. They call me the anteater.
We got Gene Simmons 2.0 over here.
They call me Dr. Love.
I'm ending on that note.